Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about play to purpose, and we're going to talk about the Dungeon Master and why the Dungeon Master should play to purpose, in my humble opinion. This is part of the play to purpose playlist, and you need to understand the play to purpose concept if this is going to be in context for you. So, if you're not sure what play to purpose is for Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion, it's the best path for Dungeons and Dragons. You need to check out the playlist, and then you'll have full context for what I'm talking about here. Okay, play to purpose. So we can abandon fun, right, and move to the higher tiers of Dungeons and Dragons. And rather than playing it for the purpose of fun, we can play it for the purpose of benefiting ourselves, specifically players, doing three things with Dungeons and Dragons: answering real questions, right, and going through the 3A cycle, right, through the abstraction, action, assertion cycle at very low risk, very low cost, and very low time compared to doing the same cycle in IRL, okay? And then last, running ontological experiments with Dungeons and Dragons. I think these are very powerful ways that we can move beyond play and move to purpose, and the purpose being to benefit players, right? Now, wait a second. Play to purpose. I've been talking about this really from the context of players doing this, and it is very easy, in my humble opinion, for players to do this. Honestly, I don't even think the dungeon master doesn't even need to know, and the three other players don't need to know. If a player wants to say, I'm taking Dungeons and Dragons very serious, I'm going to answer questions with it, I'm going to run the 3A cycle, I'm going to run abstraction to action to assertion with Dungeons and Dragons, I'm going to run ontological experiments with Dungeons and Dragons. None of their other, because everything is happening in a fantasy world, right? And it's low risk and low stakes, and it's not low stakes. It's very low risk. It's low money. It's low time, right? They don't need the other players or the dungeon master to help them. And the reason why is Dungeons and Dragons is specifically configured where it's saying, hey, do everything you can to make sure that everybody at the table shines and has what they need, right? And the dungeon master is specifically directed to saying, the thing that matters most in this world is not your non-player characters, it's not the monsters, it's not the locations, it's not the artifacts or the magic items, it is these player characters. When that player opens their mouth, you make it happen. It is like D&D is like this again and again and again. The focus, the center, the juice of this game is the player characters. You're the dungeon master, make it happen for them, right? They are and it directs dungeon masters to do this on every page, which is why Dungeons and Dragons is perfectly positioned for players to say, I'm rejecting fun. I'm not playing for fun anymore. I'm playing for benefit. I'm accepting that in my humble opinion, Dungeons and Dragons is a purpose-built tool, right? And the reality is, when people are playing it for fun, they're doing exactly the same thing as somebody who takes a chainsaw and makes an ice sculpture, right? And it's going to be the same effect. A day later, it's going to be water on the floor, and ain't nobody going to remember what happened, right? But with a chainsaw, you could build a log cabin that lasts for 100 years, and 5 families live in it. And it's the same thing with Dungeons and Dragons. It can produce real IRL world effects, in my humble opinion, and we need to stop using it to make ice sculptures, right? And so this is about saying fun is not the end of what can be done with Dungeons and Dragons. It's barely the beginning, and it should be abandoned as quickly as possible, and we should start using this purpose-built tool for purpose. So why would a dungeon master go about this? Because the reality is, when it comes to them, they don't get the same, they don't get to answer questions, right? They're the backboard on which, the ball goes up, and they are helping Dungeons and Dragons to allow its structure to unleash the wisdom, to unleash the lessons, to unleash the, everything, all the good things that can benefit these players. But they don't get much themselves. A dungeon master, like, what's in it for me? Not much. I'm gonna tell you the truth. Not much when it comes to actually running this thing for purpose and making something real and something matters that actually transitions.
Sorry about that. Got you some hot fries, okay?
Thank you. Yeah. So when it comes to that, you have this very real, thing that. So why would a dungeon master do this? Well, it's a very good question. I'm going to give you the answer right now. One reason, okay? You're a dungeon master. You got to choose. Okay? Are you going to be a jester, or are you going to be a sage? You're in the court, baby, right? Like, guess what? You playing Dungeons and Dragons, you are no longer, in my humble opinion, a normal human being. You are engaged in what in my opinion, the absolute antiquation of every single human narrative engine that's ever been created, and a reforging of how humanity creates stories and uses stories and values stories and injects power and importance into stories, right? Like, you are there, right? You are charismatic, you are intelligent, you are confident, particularly if you listen to this channel at any length, right? Because ain't no casual staying up in here, right? Like, I can tell you that right now, right? So if you here, right, and you've been here, you part of it. You part of what, the actual intellectual evolution of humanity, next step stuff, right? And so you got to ask a question. Are you going to be a jester, or are you going to be a sage, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about Jordan Peele here. I'm not going to give any spoilers for any of his movies. Let's look at Jordan Peele, okay? Jordan Peele used to be funny man on Key and Peele. Made a lot of jokes. Ha ha ha, right? Fun. You know what he did recently? He transitioned to forlorn. He makes horror movies now. And you know what the world did with him when he was funny man, when he wore the Jester cap with the tinkling bells, and he had his little tumble stick with the tinkling bells, and he had his little his shoes that curled up at the toes with the tinkling bells. They laughed at him, right? Didn't give him much respect, didn't give him much money, right? You know what happened when he said, I'm rejecting fun and I'm moving to forlorn, I'm going to horror films? You know what the world did with him then? He's one of the top directors in the world right now. His first film out of the gate earned an Oscar. He has an Oscar now. They're like, oh, hey, we liked your funny jokes. Nobody cared. Nobody paid you, right? Now we're going to pay you. We're going to respect you. We are going to value your work and give you the rewards that you deserve, because you matter. You're not a jester, you're a sage. And the world saw him. Now, what are you going to do, right? You're going to keep, gesturing around and twirling your tumble stick with the bells on it, right? Oh, are you all having fun at my table? Oh, I'm begging you, please tell me you're having fun at my table. The most useless, most ridiculous, most unimportant, unvaluable, unpowerful use of Dungeons and Dragons. Are you going to remain a jester? Or are you going to take your robes, your multi-linked chain that will go around your neck, your gold ring, your scribe? Are you going to take your position as sage and say, at this table, maybe when we clash Dungeons and Dragons against culture, maybe when we clash Dungeons and Dragons against politics, maybe when we clash Dungeons and Dragons against religion, there will be a spark of fun if we're lucky, but we do not care because we got work to do. This is a purpose-built tool. In my humble opinion, Dungeons and Dragons is a purpose-built tool, right? And it was built to benefit you and me and anything who has the wisdom to understand how the world changed on day one in 1974 when Dungeons and Dragons hit this earth like a comet and changed narrative forever, right? You have a choice. Are you going to remain a jester, or are you going to take your place as a sage? Are you going to continue to make ice sculptures that are puddles on the floor the next day, or are you going to build a log cabin that will be there for a century? You have a choice. You will be jester or you will be sage, in my humble opinion. All that's my humble opinion. What's your decision? I'd love to hear your decision in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.